I think most of you can recognize Paul Coleman. Welcome, my friend.
Wow, thank you, Carlos. The energy from you was absolutely enlightening and electric. I'm going to talk about our life here in Patagonia on a farm that where we practice permaculture and natural regeneration. So I'm going to share a few slides about that and go straight into it and try and say as much as I possibly can about this beautiful country and our beautiful part of the world in the limited time that we have. Okay, there we go. So, as I mentioned, we practice permaculture, and I thought I'd just give a very brief explanation on what permaculture is. It's an agricultural system that basically seeks to regenerate the earth, and it's based around it's modeled on the natural ecosystems. Principles, well, they're quite basic. Observe the cycles of nature, work with nature, create biodiversity, use energy wisely. By store, basically it's storing the energy in the earth, and also of course storing the carbon in the soil, which is very beneficial in combating climate change. And then also be creative and adaptive, and discover the ability to change, because changes of course are increasingly necessary in this world that we live in at the moment. So that's the basic principles. Permaculture also involves community and even such thing as alternative construction. So now I'll take you to Patagonia. Patagonia is a very big place, and when I was brought up in England, we always knew Patagonia as being Argentina because that's where all of the beef came from. And so I always thought of it for a long time as being Argentina because of that. But in reality, it's actually Argentina and Chile. Now on this map here, over here we have Buenos Aires, and then down here we have Argentinian Patagonia. Argentinian Patagonia is much drier than the Chilean side. Here we have the Andes, which separate Chile and Argentina. And as you notice here on the Chilean side, it's much greener because, of course, it rains a whole lot more. It's much closer to the ocean. And we live a long way down from Santiago. Patagonia Chileno in Chile basically begins about here, midway up the map. And we live in this beautiful little place called La Junta. Now, in order to get here through Chile, we can't just drive here. It's not possible. So we have to take a ferry. If you take a ferry, it's going to take anywhere from 14 to 24, sometimes 30 hours, depending on the weather. And so when my wife, Konomi, and I arrived here in Patagonia, we came here because we wanted beautiful nature. We wanted clean water, fresh air, beautiful forests. Wanted a beautiful place to live a life that we hoped will be sustainable. And for 6 months, we traveled along the carretera, looking for a piece of land in the middle of winter, and experienced beautiful sights like this. There are, of course, beautiful forests, as I say, and there's crystal clear waters and rivers. Vast scenes, gorgeous lakes. We're surrounded by countless national parks, and where we live is, I think there's 3 or 4 of them within just 30 or 40 kilometers. Finally, we ended up buying a little piece of land, around about a hectare, just outside of the village of La Junta, a couple of kilometers away, at the confluence of 2 mighty rivers, the Rio Paleno and the Rio Losalot, with a wonderful view of a volcano, a dormant volcano, Melimoyo. And we decided that this was where we were going to build our home. Now, because we're on top of a hill, there was certain practicalities we had to think about. One was getting the material up, because there's no road to our land. So we had to carry everything up. So we decided to build with the earth, at least for the most part, because earth is readily available. So the form of construction we chose was Earthbags, also known as super adobe. Basically what we did was we dug out for the foundation of our home, dug all around, and then we put the earth into the bags. This is very basic explanation. And then we compact it in the bags to make it very firm. And then once we have a row, we take barbed wire and we lay it all along the row, and this provides tensile strength. It's actually a very good structure in the form of earthquakes because it's very strong. And of course, it's also very environmental because we don't have to bring things from too far to be able to build our home. Bit by bit, you lay the bags row by row on top of each other as if you were laying bricks, and you build up to the height of your walls with the bags. For us, we decided to go with our house. The roof would be made of wood sourced locally. And here we are framing the house. Then, of course, comes the roof. We chose a wooden roof so that when we're actually inside the house, we can see some very, very beautiful local wood. And then we covered we put insulation and then zinc on the top for the waterproofing. Now, I'll give an explanation as to the benefits of this house and what we did next. We get a mountain of rain here where we live in La Junta. And of course, it can get very cold very quickly. And so we wanted the place to be dry and we wanted it to be warm, especially warm. We stayed in a lot of places where there was no insulation in the buildings and it was extremely cold. So we really wanted it to be warm. And so we decided to go with a couple of forms of techniques. We decided to cover the sides with turf, kind of like an Icelandic style house. And then we didn't insulate inside the house, we insulated around the house, the earth around the house to 3 or 4 meters all the way around the house. And this is so, as the years go by, the earth beneath the house gets dry. And then when the earth is dry beneath the house, it also gets warmer. So with there being no insulation under the floor, when it comes to winter, the heat rises up into the house, which enables us to keep a very nice temperature. All of the rain that falls on the roof rolls off the roof onto the turf, and because we have a sheet of plastic underneath, we direct the water into ponds. Because we're also, even though we get a mountain of rain, we're still concerned about water, because we don't actually have don't actually have any, we're not attached to the municipal water. We don't have a stream on our land. We have one behind, which used to run dry for a couple of months a year, but now because of climate change can sometimes go 4 or 5 months dry. So water is crucial to us. So all the water that falls on the roof drains into ponds. As you can see here, this is from 2011, and we've just finished turfing the house. Oh, and then this photo actually won us an award for sustainability, which came with $1,000 that we could donate. So we donated it to Food and Trees for Africa to build a school community food garden, which is something that we're also heavily involved in while we're doing this. And this is what it looked like in 2018. By adding the turf, we also added temperature. In the previous photo, it was taken in 2011, when it was -5 outside, inside the house in the morning without the fire was around 2 degrees. That's a 7 degrees centigrade difference. Now, when it's -5 outside, because the earth over the years has got warmer, it is up to +12 inside, which is a massive 17 degrees centigrade temperature difference, which means that we have to use very little firewood to make our house a comfortable temperature. As you can see by the roof, we also have solar panels. Our system's 12 volt, not 220, so we don't need a big system. All of the things that we've done, it's kind of like a smart house, except without all of the technology. And it's 1/50th of the price. Everything we do is very inexpensive and doable on a local basis. People often wonder, they say, oh, it must be dark, but we've got 3 windows in the house. We have a big picture window looking towards the rivers and the beautiful scene. And as you can see by the photograph, we have lots of light. Over the years, the interior has changed, but also so has the view. This is the view from the window. It's what I can see when I look out of the window, this gorgeous view. So we're warm, comfortable, and with this great big view. Our house is small, but the view is big. So we don't ever feel claustrophobic, not with a space like this. Now, in 2010, when we first began building our house, this is what our land looked like. There was not a single tree on it. There was not a single plant. It was for many years ago, the trees were all cut down and burned, and then it was used for many years as a cattle pasture, and it was very badly eroded. But consequently, it meant that we didn't have to destroy any natural beauty. We could only add to the beauty. And so from that day on, at the same time as building the house, we also began planting trees. By 2018, we planted 1,350 local trees, native trees to the area, and 100 fruit trees, as well as also creating the gardens. The trees, of course, are a very valuable resource, as well as also protecting us from the elements, because to the south, which will be off to the left in the photograph, we have a valley that more or less points straight down to Antarctica. And when you get winds coming up from Antarctica, it is extremely cold. So all of the big trees we planted on that side. So, and then in the middle, we didn't plant big trees because we wanted to maintain the view. And these trees also give us berries and fruits. We're still planting trees. Recently, we had a campaign for the International Day of Peace, inviting people from all over the world to add their names to the roots of the trees for the International Day of Peace, September the 21st. And we got a whole group of our friends to participate in this. And we planted another 160 trees. And we planted them in the space that I created, clearing the brush that had formed over the years. This is just a tiny little bit of the bushes that I've had to cut to plant those trees. And as you can see, it gives us a lot of material. And this material we can use in our compost, we can use it as mulch, we cover our paths with it. We are actually getting a wood chipper so that we can chop it all up and make our life easier when it comes to spreading it. We can use this in our rocket stoves. So we have a mountain of material from these small forests that we created. And it's only just not even 9 years since we began. Another way that we use this material is in what's called hugelkultur. We bury the wood in the gardens, and then, as you can see, we cover it with soil, and then the roots of the plants go down to the wood. When it's dry, they can absorb the moisture that has been collected during the heavy rains and the nutrients from the wood. And then we can have real permaculture. It just keeps on growing. Everything keeps on growing. Now, I mentioned before about the water and from the roof. This is a simple pond that we created in 2011. This pond probably cost around about $20, and it's been existing now for, well, it's still there, but it'll go on for 10 years. All the water falls from the roof. You don't see it make its way to the pond, but it does because it passes invisibly underneath the turf and underneath the gardens and goes to the pond. We create the ponds in the same way as we do our house. We excavate perhaps 1 meter, fill the bags to raise the walls another meter. Then we line them mostly with this very inexpensive black plastic, which we can get at the local ferreteria. It's important for us to be able to buy things locally, because otherwise we have to travel 300 kilometers to anywhere big to be able to buy anything else. Ferreteria is a hardware shop. It keeps the price down, but it also makes it makes it accessible to other people. And for that reason, we become quite well known because we get lots of groups from the government coming to study our ponds. As you can see, within a very short while, this is probably about maybe a year later, the pond looks quite natural. This is the same picture in the photo. It looks very natural. And within no time at all, they are full of frogs and tadpoles. And these frogs and tadpoles help to balance our ecosystem because they eat the mosquitoes that would otherwise plague our life. And interestingly, down in the village, which is kind of swampland, it's full of mosquitoes. But I don't think I've been bitten for the last couple of years. The frogs are doing their job wonderfully. And of course, with all of the ponds, we also get dragonflies, and then we get, of course, with the trees, lots of birds. We've definitely brought the biodiversity back. Then we come to another way of keeping the water, but also extending the gardens is the terraces. We now have 19 ponds. Every time we make a terrace, we build a pond. It makes it easier to water by water the terraces. And all of the paths are designed so that when it gets heavy rain, it directs the water into the terraces. Within a very short period of time, it begins to look totally natural. And here in this photo here, you can see we've taken away the turf. Now, what I do with the turf, I build these walls that you can see, and everything becomes very natural looking. So absolutely nothing goes to waste. Now, what you see here as well is what is called a walapini. It originated in Bolivia. It's an earth-sheltered greenhouse, and we began experimenting them around about 2011. As well, we've extended the house. As you can see, we have a sunroom, kitchen and pantry, conservatory, plant nursery, which now serves as a workshop when we have people here studying things connected to the greenhouse. It means basically we can get our things from the greenhouse without having to go outside in the stormy weather. With this type of earth-sheltered greenhouse, we can grow things all year. This was our first earth-sheltered greenhouse, walapini. And it was so successful, we grew a couple of small watermelons, and then we decided, whoa, we can pretty well grow anything in this. So we decided to build another. The funding from this was great. One day we had a visitor from a local agricultural department, INDAP, and they said, Paul, we got money for projects. Would you like some? So I said, yes, sure. So he said, what do you want to do? I said, I'd like to build a big walapini. And within a month, they gave us the money to build a big walapini. It's a lot of work. It was 3 months of labor, but they paid for all of the material, which was great. We dug it out, but by hand, of course. And here you can see a very happy Konomi almost at the end of the construction process. After a couple of months later, the vegetables are growing. As you can see here, we're also building a pond. The pond inside helps to keep the place cool in the summer and then warm in the winter. It provides a very good thermal mass. We've been very impressed with that. Plus, we don't have to carry the water too far to water the plants. And then a couple of months after that, it's starting to look like a jungle. Here you can see we're even growing papaya trees. We've got avocado. And now, of course, it is a jungle. This year, we will fill it even more, and we are hoping to get our first fruits from the papaya. That's the finished result. It's very low profile, which I think is very important because in permaculture, you also don't want to destroy the natural scene. You want it all to kind of blend in as much as possible. One of our best incomes comes from seeds. Because of all the plants that we've got, we actually buy seeds from up north of the country, and then we bring them down here, experiment to see if we can grow them here in Patagonia. If they work, we plant them the next year. The seeds that we gather, we don't eat any, we plant the seeds. And then if it's successful, then the next year we sell the seeds. And we started off with just local people buying a few of our seeds. Word of mouth passed out. next thing you know, people all over the region are buying them. We don't do any advertising, and now we're selling them all over the country. People are telling us all the time they have a more than 90% germination rate. They're very impressed with the seeds. And at first, when we started to sell kale seeds, no one had ever even heard of kale down here. And a few years later, we went to sell kale seeds at our local farmers market, and no one was interested because everyone had our kale growing in their gardens. So in this sense, we're definitely increasing the biodiversity. As well, we also, yes?
You have 2 minutes more.
Okay, great. Well, we also do collect our things from our garden. We make vinegars, multiple types of vinegars. We give tours of our gardens now to all sorts of groups. And because of the tours and the visits from the government and all the media we've received, then we decided to invite our friends to create the Austral Garden Route. And so what we do is tourists visiting the region can come and attend workshops, meet up with local people, go to local farms, experience the local culture. Our workshops are value added. So we teach people how to make money from the products of their garden and thereby enhance local economies and strengthen local economies. These workshops have been going terrific. We've got vinegar here, vegan cooking here, sushi here. And because of the pandemic, which of course has been an absolute disaster everywhere, but for us, to be honest, it's not been such a disaster. We've now taken these workshops online, and it's been very successful. So as a group, we're practicing what we're calling virtual tourism. And we are now giving workshops to 10 schools and 20 teachers in Puerto Aysén, one of the larger towns in our region, advising them on how to create organic gardens in their schools. And this is a big thing for me. I think every single school on the planet should be growing their own food, and that we should all be consuming locally. And that is our goal with the Austral Garden Route, and our lives here is to encourage as much local consumption as possible and create local markets for everybody so they can raise their economy. And as a community, we can all thrive into the future without participating in the devastation of the planet. And I think that I can finish about there. And yep, that's good.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank
Chile
you,
is a very lucky country to having you in the South. We honor your presence, and you remind me another person very important for Chilean people, that is Douglas Tompkins and Chris Tompkins, a marriage that really helped us to protect our land. Thousands of very wonderful places now are protected, are owned by the Chilean people because they give us the really thanks to wonderful people as you that give us that kind of presence.